Take out your unit circle. Everybody take out your unit circle. And we'll do this first one in degrees. You know, we can measure an angle in degrees or radian. But for this first one, we will measure it in degrees. So let's go ahead and make our little T table. So 0 degrees, we're only going to go by a quarter. So there's 360 degrees in a circle. And we are going to count by 1/4. So that would be 0, 90, 180, 270, and 360. So what I want you to do is go around the unit circle and tell me the sign. And it's sign X or Y. Which one are we looking at? Y. Tell me the sign of each one of these angles. Looking at your unit circle. So let's do the first one together. What is the sign of 0 degrees? Maybe I heard it, I don't know. 0. What's the sign of 90 degrees? 1. Go ahead and continue. What's the sign of 180 degrees? What's the sign of 270? What's the sign of 360? Okay. So we're going to graph these numbers on our plane, on our graph. The x-coordinate is not labeled. So I want to count by 45s. So this will be 0, this will be 45, this is 90, this is 135. So I count every other one as 90, okay? So what I mean by that, and you can scale it on your own, whichever way you want to when you have your test. Is that on my graph, I'm marking it so that this is 0, and then this is 90, this is 180, this is 270, this is 360. So let's go ahead and graph it out. The one thing that you need to understand is that it's a pattern, okay? Sine starts at the middle, and in this example, the middle is 0. Then it goes up to the top of the wave, back to the middle, bottom of the wave, back to the middle, okay? So when you're graphing it, I'm starting it at 0. Then I'm rotating to, at 90 degrees, I'm at 1. At 180, I'm at 0. At 270, -1. At 360, back at 0. It's a pattern though. So what do you think this is going to be? Am I going to go up or down? Up. It's a wave. Okay? When I go to the left, where do you think I'm going to stop? Because there's only 3 numbers. It's either -1, 0, or 1. So when I'm going to the left, according to this wave, do you think I'm going to go down or am I going to go up? Down. Because remember, this represents -90. This is -90. And -90 is coterminal with 270. Okay, so we are going to go down. Then we're going to go back up to the middle, hit the top, back to the middle, hit the bottom. And this is my wave. And that is the parent function for sine. Your domain is your degrees, and that's -infinity to infinity. Your range is your lowest and highest y value. So the lowest y value would be -1. Because if you look at your unit circle, the lowest value is -1. What's the highest value? 1. And you're going to use brackets because it does equal -1 and 1. The period is the degrees in one full revolution. And because we're talking about the parent, how many degrees are in the unit circle? If you go around the unit circle one full time, it's 360 degrees. Or 2 pi. So I'm doing it in degrees and radians, but on the test, it'll probably be all in radians. Okay, your midline is the middle of the wave. And that is always going to be when we hit our transformations, okay? So it's the middle y value. So what y value is in the middle? Think of it that way. And that would be 0. So now what I want you to do is create a table for cosine. So we graph sine. Now let's make one for cosine. Look at your unit circle and write down the cosine for these 5 degrees. So the cosine of 0 degrees and the cosine. So now we're looking at the x. So looking at your unit circle, write the cosine now. So now we're doing the cosine. Cosine is the x value. So look at your unit circle. What is the cosine of 0 degrees? 1. The cosine of 90 degrees? 0. The cosine of 180 degrees? -1. The cosine of 270 degrees? And the cosine of 360? Back at 1. All right, go ahead and graph that. Cosine starts at the top, the highest y value. Sine starts at the middle. So the domain is the same. It's all real numbers. Your range, your lowest and highest y value is the same. -1 bracket to 1 bracket. The degrees in 1 revolution is still 360 or 2 pi. And your midline is y = 0. So now let's start applying some transformations. So let's go ahead and go to examples 1 and 2. So before we actually get started graphing our transformations, just mark there are 4 different transformations that you can apply to a trig graph. And AH and K should sound familiar. Who remembers AH and K? Okay, so it's back again. So the A value, and I use sine, but that could be any of the 6. It doesn't have to be sine. It could be cosine, tangent, secant. It could be any of those, okay? The A value and the K value, these two, can you write that these two change the range? Okay? And that's what we're going to focus on today. Changes in our y value. So just like before, the A value is multiplied by y, and your K value we add or subtract to the y value. Now B and H, we'll practice with those tomorrow, but these two, these can be found inside of your parentheses, inside parentheses. Okay, notice that that's where those two live. The B and the H are always inside. So those changes can be found inside of the parentheses. The A and K are on the outside. So sticking with example 1, what trig function are we working with? We're working with cosine, and we're going to graph with a table today, but I do think we'll get to a place where you won't need to make a table because it's the same 3 points. Cosine starts at the top. Okay, so once you figure out your 3 numbers, I very rarely use a table, but it's our first day, so we'll use a table today. All right, so let's go ahead and write down our parent table for cosine. So what I want you to do, I'm going to make 2 tables. So this is y = cosine x, and then we'll do another one for our transformation. So let's go ahead and make our table again for cosine. So tell me the cosine of those 5 numbers. Cosine starts at the top. So cosine is 1. Cosine of 0 degrees is 1. The cosine of 90 degrees is 0. The cosine of 180 is -1. The cosine of 270 is cosine of 360 is 1 again. Okay, so let's look at this graph. So this says f of x equals 3 times the cosine of x plus 2. So we have some transformations. We have this 3 and this 2. The 3 represents the amplitude. So it is going to be stretched by a factor of 3. The 2 is your vertical shift, or your K value. So what I need for you to do, we always do order of operations without a calculator, is we need to apply the transformations to Y. So I need you to take your Y values, multiply them by A, and add K. So you're going to we're only changing Y today. We're not focusing in on changing X. So without a calculator, multiply by 3 and add 2. You always, order of operations, you multiply before you add. So that's why we apply the transformation of the amplitude first, and then we do our vertical shift. So you're going to take 1 times 3 plus 2. And I know you feel like you cannot do that without a calculator, but I'm telling you, you can. What is 1 times 3 plus 2? 5. What's 0 times 3 plus 2? 2. That's an ugly 5. Okay. What's negative 1 times 3? Negative 3. And what's negative 3 plus 2? Negative 1. So these are my 3 numbers. And these are the only 3 numbers I'm going to graph. So now I'm going back to the 2. And then I go to the top, which is 5. Go ahead and graph that. So starting at the 0, we're at 5. And then 90. So 90 is, remember, every other line. So at the 90 mark, so this is where I'm graphing. Let me make these a little bit more bold here. Okay. So this is my 90. I'm going to go up to 2. And then at 180, I'm going down to negative 1. And then I go back up to the middle. And then I go to the top, back down to the middle. Now, I want you all, when you turn this in, when you do your test, and I'm going to update the dates on Canvas this afternoon, you have to graph 2 full revolutions. This only represents 1. This is only 1. So I need to go backwards with this pattern. Okay? So what you need to understand, though, is that remember, when you're going backwards, negative 90 is coterminal with 270. This is the same as negative 180. This is the same as negative 270. So this can help you when you're going backwards, because going backwards, when we go to the left, we're at negative 90 first. Negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, negative 360. But when I'm looking at this, I know I'm at the top, so my next stop is going to be the middle. So the middle is 2. And then after I hit the middle, I'm going to go down to the bottom. The bottom is negative 1. Now I'm going back up to the middle. And then I hit the top. So this would be an acceptable graph. You have to make a full 2 revolutions at minimum. Your domain is all real numbers. Your range is the lowest and the highest y value. So my lowest y value is -1. The highest is +5. We don't have a change yet in our period. We haven't really dealt with that yet. We're going to deal with that tomorrow. So that's still going to be 2 pi or 360. The amplitude is what? What is our amplitude? 3. What did we do vertically? It was 2. So what did that make the wave do? Go up or down? Up by how many? Up 2. We're not dealing with any horizontal shifts today. The midline. If you were to draw a line that goes through the middle of this wave, that would be y equals what? So what y value is in the middle? 2. And that's going to be the same as your k value. So this is y equals 2, which is always going to be y equals k. Right, so if I put an arrow on this one, that means that it's going to go down towards negative infinity. And this graph does not go down towards negative infinity. All right, it's only in between -1 and 5. So we don't have arrows. So don't put any arrows on this one. Okay? Go ahead and make your table for example 2. It's our last example. Now we're talking about sine. So make your table for your parent table for sine, and then we will apply our 2 transformations. Okay, so we have our parent table. So the amplitude for this example is 2, and my k value is -1. So without a calculator, multiply your y values by your amplitude, which is 2, and then I want you to subtract 1, going all the way down. Multiply by 2, subtract 1. Multiply by 2, subtract 1 without a calculator. And then graph that out. So now let's go ahead and fill out our domain. Our domain is all real numbers. Our range is my lowest y value and my highest y value. So my lowest y value is -3. And the highest y value we have is 1. Still not dealing with our period changes, so that's still 2 pi or 360. What is the amplitude of this wave? 2. And how did this shift vertically? Down 1. No horizontal shift or phase shift. And our midline is y equals what? Where is the middle of, what's our middle y value? And again, that's the same as k. So it's -1. Okay, so we're going to end there, and tomorrow we will finish out our notes.